Today, we have the honor of hosting Jaansi Patel, a student at Phillips Exeter Academy and the gold medalist of the 2024 International Research Olympiad. Jaansi's research on the effects of autonomous sensory meridian response, ASMR, on mental function has garnered international acclaim. Beyond her research, she has contributed significantly to science communication as a speaker at TEDx and as a co director of the event TEDx Phillips Exeter Academy. She also co hosts the Learn On podcast focusing on neuroscience, medical technology, and health equity. Now, as she embarks on her academic journey at Harvard, we're super excited to delve into her experiences, insights, and future aspirations. Please join me in welcoming Jaansi.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, of course. Just jumping straight into this, you have a ton of interesting research work, and I think the viewers are kind of dying to know a little bit about that. Would you be able to just introduce maybe some of your work on ASMR? And you also mentioned you're part of a neuroscience lab or may have worked there recently. Would you be able to talk just a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So, my research journey starts officially in the 10th grade when I started working on this project that you introduced. So, I've always been really interested in neuroscience and mental health. I especially became interested in it at the start of the pandemic when I was in middle school and I saw the effects of social isolation really firsthand as, myself and a lot of people that I was close to were going through really important parts of their life. And so, as I was thinking about mental health, obviously, accessibility of healthcare is a huge issue worldwide and also, especially in this country. So, I was just thinking about ways that we can make preventative mental health care more accessible. And that's when I stumbled upon ASMR, which I'm sure a lot of our viewers have heard about or seen on social media. And I tried it out for myself. It seemed pretty cool. And so I just started looking for journal articles to understand how exactly it works or the mechanism within the brain that allows it to be effective. And surprisingly, there's been little to no actual research done on it. Which I found really interesting. So I worked on this project. I used electroencephalography, which is a form of brain imaging, in order to understand the mechanisms by which ASMR um, actually makes a difference, if at all. And that was super exciting. So I worked on it through 10th and 11th grade, just kind of on my own with the help of an independent mentor. And then also this past summer, after the end of my junior year, I had the opportunity to work as a paid research intern at an MIT lab for neuroimaging. So I contributed to some ongoing research projects regarding sleep, memory consolidation, aging, how all of those affect the brain, which was really exciting. So, yeah, it's been quite a whirlwind, and I'm super grateful for everything that I've gotten to do so far through high school.
Wow, that's super impressive. Yeah. I think something that, for the viewers who don't know about this, I actually met John C. at the 2024 International Research Olympiad, which is a new competition dedicated for helping students get into research. John C. was actually the gold medalist, as I mentioned. And yeah, I'm just curious, could you share a little bit more about your journey on how you came across IRO and maybe why you decided to compete in the contest?
Absolutely. So, as I mentioned, I've kind of been in the world of high school research for a little bit of time. And so I think I stumbled upon the IRO just as I was like exploring and talking to people in a part of that community. And so it was just about like now, a year ago, which is really crazy to think about. And initially, I just joined the opens round on a whim. But, I remember hearing you talking about the IRO and specifically how it's meant to advance critical thinking and analysis in terms of research and journal articles. And at this time in my life, a year ago, I was really, really deep in exploring a bunch of research, and I was reading new articles every day as I was trying to advance and level up my research project and prepare to present it at science fairs. And so, as I was practicing on my own to become really hyper specialized in the field that I was working in, a lot of that resonated with me in terms of how the IRO aims to increase scientific literacy and encourage high schoolers to be able to develop those fundamental skills in order to then apply it to higher level research. So I guess that's why I decided to join. And it was definitely a very, very unique experience. I haven't participated in too many other like science competitions through high school, but I did in middle school. And so comparing those experiences to the IRO, I can definitely say that it was very, very unique in terms of the questions asked. And as I prepared, I really felt myself kind of improving in terms of the speed at which I could process and comprehend things. And that has definitely, those skills have definitely helped me as I've continued to expand my research since then.
That's really great. Yeah, that's super awesome to hear. And yeah, just a little bit on that preparation aspect. We're actually filming this interview because recently the IRO opened its 2025 registrations, and as you mentioned, it's been a whole year. And so I'm sure a lot of IRO aspiring researchers are watching this video and they're curious, kind of, how did you prepare a little bit more on that? Just because, of course, you're the gold medalist winner, and so it's kind of a roadmap for them to hear. Maybe just like a little bit about from the opens to the semifinals and maybe a little bit about the finals event would be awesome.
Yeah, so I guess in some way I spent so much time preparing for this and also like not that much time at all. So when I was actually like preparing for the IRO, I didn't end up putting in crazy hours the way that, I've heard some other people preparing for like other kinds of Olympiads or competitions. Um, I had just taken, the mock exams that were published and did a little bit of reading to understand the format of the exam. But also, in a way, I had been preparing for many, many years because, as I mentioned, like being able to do effective research means that you really have to understand the field in which you're doing your project in. And so, conducting literature reviews, which I know you've talked about a lot before, is a really important part of like getting started and understanding how you can make a meaningful contribution. And you have to constantly be understanding the newest advancements that are made in those fields, in order to bring that aspect to your research. So I've spent countless hours through middle school and high school, just reading about new scientific discoveries. And then ultimately, as I was able to start comprehending things a little bit more, actually looking at high level, like graduate level journal articles, reading through those. And so I guess in that sense, even before I knew that the IRO was a thing, I had been preparing because I was increasing the speed at which I could read and understand things, increasing the depth at which I could think critically about things, looking at how one can understand a researcher's methodology and improve on it, all of that. So I guess the main way to prepare for the IRO is really to just be curious, which I know is a little bit cliched, but like I think with actually preparing for scientific research and just, when you have a question or you're curious about it, looking things up online is the best way that I was able to kind of hone my skills. But of course, as I found out that I was a semifinalist and eventually a finalist, I also started reading research papers more in the areas that I'm weaker in. So because my area of specialty, I guess, is neuroscience, my strength is really biology and also a little bit of chemistry. But as for physics and also like some more technical aspects of computer science, I wanted to make sure that I kind of had the fundamentals down. So looking at seminal papers in those areas was definitely super useful for me as well.
Wow, that's really great. Yeah, as I think back to, I guess, some high school experiences, I remember, especially when it comes to some of these competitive sort of environments, you often think about if there's any like shortcuts or any special techniques. But I think what often kind of like ends up working the best is really just like looking at the fundamental way that a competition or an award is structured. And it's like, hey, it's going to reward people who are good at research, so let's kind of like build those skills. I really love the way that you tackled that, and also how you described that, hey, the research that you were doing on the side also just kind of helped for preparing for IRO because you're reading research papers and you're learning to think critically, etc. So that's really great. I guess moving to the finals event at IRO, obviously I think we both have some memories from that time, and of course last year was our first year hosting the competition. We're very excited for this upcoming year, and I'm just curious, at the time, how did it feel to win the gold medal? Like, were you kind of expecting it? Did you know that you did super well on the exams, or yeah, was it like unexpected? Just curious on your thoughts and feelings back at that moment.
Yeah, it was such a blur because the IRO happened actually right after I finished finals for school. And
So
so
true.
I was I was sleep deprived for the whole week. I had so many things going on. Like it was just a crazy time. So, I was already obviously super grateful to be a finalist, and I knew that I had put in as much effort as I could. I also was just, thinking realistically in terms of how like I had so many other things going on. So in the like 2 weeks leading up, I didn't really get to prepare much. And so I was like, I'll just walk in, I'll see how it goes, and I'll um, do my best and make the most out of the experience. Uh, I think it was kind of hard to gauge how I did in terms of walking out of like the exam. I remember like a lot of the finalists were crowding together and talking about potential answers and everything, as people usually do after a stressful experience like that. And I don't know, I didn't really have crazy high expectations going in. And I think also because the competition was so new and there wasn't like as much to compare this experience to, because it felt so new, I was kind of okay with having that uncertainty. But obviously, winning was an incredible experience. I'm so, so grateful for how everything ended up. And it was also just really cool to be able to meet other finalists from across the world, to hear about their unique research interests, also hearing from other panelists in terms of their past experiences through high school research and advice they have for the future through college and beyond. And touring Harvard was amazing as well. And I'm still in contact with quite a few of the finalists that I had met. So it was really an exhilarating experience overall. And I think that, as people are signing up for this year's IRO, like definitely it's something that's super, something to be super excited for. Yeah.
That's awesome. And I guess timeline wise, the finals competition last year, I think, was either end of May or very early June.
Yeah.
So what's it been like after that? I imagine you had the rest of your summer, first semester of senior year of high school, and so forth. Yeah, what's that been like?
Yeah, I mean, it's been super busy, but really great. So, right after the IRO concluded, I was on summer break. And so, summer break was mostly just working at the lab that I had mentioned, and then also working on college applications. That also took up most of the first semester of senior year. But yeah, I think that after the whole IRO experience, I definitely have been doing a lot more reflecting on like my future plans, in terms of where I want to take my research next, and um, you know, looking to the future in terms of going to Harvard. I think there's so many incredible opportunities that I have yet to explore about research, and also I've been working a lot more in my area of like mental health advocacy and more on the activism side. So I've been working a lot on my podcast, which we can also talk a little bit more about. I think having the IRO label was really cool as I was reaching out to new and even more accomplished guests. So yeah, a lot has happened since then.
That's awesome. Yeah, just I guess on that podcast front, tell me more. I know you mentioned at the beginning called the Learn On podcast. Is that correct? Could you tell us a little
Yes.
bit more about yeah, the recent topics, maybe some special episodes that viewers can go check out?
Yeah, so the tagline is Science by Kids for Everyone, which I think pretty much summarizes the goal of this podcast. So I started it in the pandemic, August of 2020, after the seventh grade, right around when I was also really getting into research and neuroscience specifically. And so at first, it was just a project that my little brother and I did, like out of boredom. Since it was the summer, we were stuck inside because of quarantine. But, as our viewership started to increase, I realized that there's really this big demographic we can serve here in terms of breaking down the jargon around science so that, younger people who are interested in learning more, but haven't necessarily had, rigorous coursework or opportunities to be able to get into that at a really deep level, have some kind of starting point. And so I just remember like reading a bunch of articles in magazines like the Scientific American, understanding like the newest kind of technologies that have come out, and then breaking it down and summarizing it in short form episodes. And then since then, I've definitely specialized a lot more into talking specifically about mental health and neuroscience. And as I've mentioned, that's my main area of interest. And also talking more broadly about healthcare accessibility, health equity, digital health, those kinds of things. And so right now I have it in an interview format, very similar to like how we're talking right now. And so some special guests, I guess, we've had recently. Dr. Robert Langer, he was a co-founder of Moderna. He's also a professor at Harvard and MIT. So we got to talk about his experiences really building a company from the ground up and what his research was like. Another really meaningful one was Dr. Catalin Carico. She did research at UPenn and she's a Nobel laureate. She won the Nobel Prize for her mRNA research, which ultimately helped to manufacture COVID vaccines and deliver them at a really rapid pace, which helped save a lot of lives. Another one is Dr. Vincent Cerf, who is widely regarded as one of the co-fathers of the internet. And so we talked about his experiences through all of that. So yeah, some really incredible guests that I've had the opportunity to interview. And I think a common theme throughout all of that is, we get to talk about their experiences being really young and starting off in the world of research to how their career has developed and where they are right now. And I think focusing on the kind of human interest behind those stories has always been really special to me. And it definitely, again, connects a lot with my aspirations in terms of research and what I want to do in the future. So yeah, thanks for the plug, and I highly recommend that everyone checks it out.
Yeah, wow, that's really amazing, and yeah, no, I've heard of several of the people you mentioned, and so I'll definitely be visiting that after our episode together. Yeah, and then just I guess a little bit more on that front. Now that you're, I guess, starting to think about college and beyond, you mentioned that you're interested in studying neuroscience. I'm curious, how will kind of research continue to play a part of your undergraduate experience and beyond? I think something that I've seen in some of the comment sections of my YouTube channel, as well as I guess just general sentiment online about youth research is like, hey, this is not important, or it's not possible, or students should only start when they're in graduate school, or maybe at the latest is like in later years of undergrad and so forth. And obviously, you're a kind of shining example of how students can make an impact even earlier on. So yeah, I'm just curious, like, yeah, do you plan to continue your research? Is there any specific lab that you're interested in continuing, maybe at that MIT lab, or looking at Harvard? Yeah, I'm just kind of curious on that front.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, definitely. I want to continue my research. I'm not yet quite sure if I want to extend this exact project or if I want to, start something that's kind of in a similar area, but working at a different lab, depending on the opportunities that are available. I would also love to continue research at my MIT lab, and I'm actually talking about that with my PI right now. So, yeah, I think that I definitely know that I want to continue research through my undergraduate experience, but also kind of the way that my research journey has progressed through high school has been definitely nonlinear, and it's been a lot of like opportunities that I find out about or that come my way, and then I kind of adapt based on that. So I also want to keep an open mind and see all that Harvard has to offer when I actually get on campus. um, but yes, I know for sure that I want to continue research in undergrad. And, I had mentioned to you earlier that I'm planning on being on the pre med track and going to medical school. And so obviously, research has a huge aspect in terms of building the skills and connections necessary to succeed in that path forward. And I'm really glad that you brought up kind of the discussions around impact of high school research, because I think impact is directly correlated to how much effort you put in and how passionate you truly are about your research. And I think, Rishab, you've also seen this with your own high school research project and how that might have been continued on or like referenced by other researchers. But of course, like you have to manage your expectations appropriately. Like you're not going to find the cure for cancer at a DIY at home lab made out of your parents' garage. But at the same time, I think that there are so many incredible examples of high schoolers who have been able to change the world with their innovation and sharing their ideas. And so I guess it ultimately comes down to the drive that someone has in terms of making their research, really impactful in the world. And again, that connects back to what I was saying about really understanding the advancements that are made in your field at the time so that the research that you do does have a high impact. And also something that I think I've really realized when talking with older, much more experienced researchers is that being young and being relatively inexperienced can be a disadvantage, but it can also be an advantage in terms of, the way that someone who is just starting out in their research journey looks at problems versus someone who has had decades of experience might be very different. And so I think if you're able to kind of shift your mindset in terms of thinking about how you can use your kind of newness to that area as a strength and think about more novel, creative, interdisciplinary ways, has been really important for me personally. And I highly recommend that, as high schoolers and even middle schoolers are getting into research, that you try thinking about things that way as well.
That's really awesome. Yeah, and I guess one thing I really agree with, and I found really interesting, was you mentioned how passion for what you do can often be directly correlated with the impact that students see in their research. But of course, also you mentioned effort, and so I'm just curious on that front. And I think everyone has their own methods and everyone has their own ways, but just curious on your end. Obviously, you've been super busy outside of school with a ton of really impressive extracurricular activities and advocacy efforts and research. How do you kind of suggest students to balance that together, and make time for it?
Yeah, that's a very good question, and something that I'm still kind of working on right now. I mean, my school is kind of notorious for having a very heavy workload in terms of classes and academics. So, of course, there's all the typical time management things that I can offer you in terms of, making to do lists, vision boarding about the future, like having your own organizational system. I think all of that is relatively well known, and, it definitely does take a lot of trial and effort in terms of figuring out how to handle your schedule and like personal preferences. But I think also one thing that has really helped me when I've had so much on my plate and a lot to manage is, again, that aspect of passion. Because like everything that I've ended up doing in high school in terms of classes and extracurriculars have been things that I've been truly, truly interested in. And so, after a long day of like studying for tests and I had to, sit down and like do my daily data collection for my research project, it never felt like I had to, force myself and get myself to do it. It felt more like I'm privileged to be able to work on this project. And, every day as I would, get back to my routine of working through, especially when times get really busy, I think like having that passion is really necessary in order to keep going. Having that kind of intrinsic motivation has pushed me throughout all of high school. So again, with time management, there's a lot of things that people can do in terms of organization. I have my own giant to-do list and calendar and everything to stay organized. But also I think time management just becomes so much easier when you look within yourself and figure out what you truly want to do and then just do that as much as you can.
Wow, really well said. And yeah, I'm super impressed by you. I mean, I think senior year of high school, I started to, realize some of these things, but definitely not, figured it out to that extent. So thanks for sharing that with our audience. I know we have a ton of high schoolers here who are actively confused about, hey, how do I start research? A ton of like freshmen in high school or even like eighth graders who are like looking to high school and thinking about, oh, what things should I do?
Mhm.
What, research activities can I start and things like that. So this is going to be really helpful for them. Yeah, is there anything else you'd like to share about your journey, research, or future aspirations with the audience?
Yeah, I mean, I think one other thing I want to highlight is that with that aspect of like my journey being nonlinear, I know I've talked about how I got really into my field of interest like pretty early on, but also I think it's worth mentioning that, interdisciplinarity is very much a strength. And so you don't need to have everything perfectly figured out. You don't need to have a 10-year like vision in terms of what exactly you want to major in or what like very specific field that you want to continue research in. Of course, like having those goals are very nice, but also I think embracing the fact that, sometimes unexpected opportunities might come your way and you might find yourself doing something that you would never imagine. I mean, that definitely characterizes my experience with the IRO. So I think also as you're kind of younger and starting out in your research journey and realizing how many opportunities there are and exploring all the things that you want to do, I think it's important to not be burdened about the fact that, or like the thought that you really, really want to be like only specialized in this area of interest. I mean, Rishabh, I think you also like kind of got into neuroscience a little bit later on into your high school career, if I'm remembering correctly. Um, so I guess like knowing that like having experience in research and in science overall is great, but if you don't have everything perfectly figured out, that's totally fine too.
Absolutely. Yeah, thanks so much for this. And to the viewers who are watching, thank you so much for watching. And be sure to check out Jaansi's podcast, which we'll link in the description below, as well as register for the 2025 IRO. Jaansi, thank you so much for taking the time to be on with us today.
Yeah, of course. Thank you so much for having me once again.